I was standing on my porch, sipping my morning coffee, when I suddenly heard boots crunching on my gravel driveway. I looked up and froze. 2 HOA guards in cheap gray uniforms were already halfway across my yard. And behind them, a gray HOA SUV rolled in like they were raiding a crime scene. Then I saw her. The 45-year-old HOA president standing with her arms crossed, smirking like she owned MY land. I shouted, "You step one more foot on my property, and this ends badly." But they didn't stop. They didn't slow down. They didn't even blink. So I walked back inside, grabbed my shotgun, and when I came out again, the entire HOA froze like they had just seen death walk out the front door. And that's when everything exploded. I've lived on this land my whole life. Not because it's fancy, not because it's valuable, but because it's home, the kind of place you protect the same way you protect family. My father planted half the trees here. My grandfather built the first fence line with his own hands. And now, at 47, I'm the one walking these same fields every morning. A middle-aged man with a short beard, a mustache, and a black baseball cap that's been sun-bleached from years of real work. Out here, the mornings are quiet. No traffic. No neighbors arguing. Just the sound of birds, wind, and old wooden boards settling in the barn behind my house. At least, that's how it used to be. Everything changed the moment the new HOA subdivision popped up on the far edge of the valley. 500 shiny little homes, each packed with rules stricter than a military base. At first, I didn't care. They were miles away and outside my property line. But HOA people, they don't stay in their lane. First, it was just the sound of their SUVs driving around the ridge. Then I started noticing them slowing down whenever they passed my boundary fence. Taking pictures. Measuring things. Acting like detectives instead of neighbors. But it was the HOA president who made everything clear. A 45-year-old white woman, sharp jawline, fake smile, and the kind of arrogance that fills a room before she even speaks. The moment she saw my land, you could tell she thought it would look better under her control. At a community road meeting weeks earlier, she looked at me and said, "Your lot sits in an area the HOA plans to regulate soon." I laughed. She didn't. Her smile faded and she repeated it. "We're expanding oversight. You should prepare to cooperate." That was the first red flag. A few days later, I saw their gray HOA SUV parked just outside my fence line. Engine off, 2 men inside, staring at my property like they were surveying land they already owned. That was red flag number 2. By the time I realized what they were planning, it was already too late. Something was coming. Something big. Something that would push them straight onto my land. And me straight into the kind of fight no homeowner ever wants. But every real landowner is ready for. It was a Wednesday morning, quiet, bright, and cold enough that every breath looked like smoke. I was walking the fence line with my coffee when something felt off. You know that feeling when the air changes, when your gut tells you someone's on your land before your eyes confirm it? I felt that. I rounded the corner of my barn. And my heart dropped. 2 HOA guards were already inside my fence. Not outside. Not near the boundary. Inside. Both wore cheap gray security uniforms, the kind that look official from far away, but up close you can tell they're stitched by the lowest bidder. One held a clipboard, the other had a measuring tape stretched across my grass like he was planning construction. The gray HOA SUV was parked on the roadside, engine running, its HOA decals shining like they were proud of trespassing. I walked toward them, trying to stay calm. "Morning," I said, standing 10 feet away. "This is private property. What are you doing past my fence?" The guard with the clipboard didn't even look up. "Routine HOA inspection," he muttered. I almost laughed. "Inspection? This isn't HOA land." This time he looked at me like I was the one trespassing on his workplace. It's part of the upcoming HOA coverage expansion, he said. Before I could respond, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Sharp, smug, and dripping with entitlement. Yes, it is. I turned around and saw her walking down the road. The HOA president. 45 years old, white, stiff posture, and a tight smile that only meant trouble. She stepped right up to my fence like she owned it. We're simply ensuring compliance, she said. Your property borders the new development, so we need to familiarize ourselves with the land. I stared at her, shocked. Familiarize? By trespassing? Her smile didn't move an inch. We notified you. No, you didn't. She shrugged, like facts didn't matter to her. Well, we're notifying you now. That was it. The arrogance. The entitlement. The way her guards stood behind her like backup dancers in a bad music video. I took one step closer. This land, I said slowly, is mine. It's been mine for generations. And you don't step on it without permission. She cocked her head, smirk returning. We'll see about that. Then she snapped her fingers at the guards, a silent command to continue working. I raised my voice. Out. All of you. Now. The guards paused. The HOA president glared at them like a queen whose subjects were disobeying. Finally, she waved her hand dismissively. Fine. We'll leave for now. But this conversation isn't over. The guards followed her back to the SUV. The engine revved. Dust rose behind their tires. As they drove off, I stood there gripping my coffee cup so hard it almost cracked. That was the first trespass. The first disrespect. The first sign that this HOA was planning something big. But I didn't know then how far they would go. Or how close I would come to pulling a trigger to defend what was rightfully mine. After that first trespassing incident, I hoped they'd take the hint. Most normal people would. But HOA people? They're built differently, full of ego, full of paperwork, and full of the belief that rules only matter when they write them. Within a week, the real escalation began. The letters. It started with a bright white envelope shoved into my mailbox. HOA notice, required access for property review. I opened it. My jaw clenched. They were demanding permission to inspect my land to ensure it met community environmental guidelines. Environmental guidelines? My land wasn't even inside their community. I tossed the letter aside. The next day, another letter. Then another. Red ink, bold text, threats of administrative action. The HOA president was trying to drown me in paperwork. The surveillance. That same week, I noticed the gray HOA SUV driving slower than usual past my property. Not normal slow, creeping. Every time they passed, someone inside had a phone out the window, filming. I installed a trail cam near the fence line. The very next morning, the footage made my blood boil. 2 HOA guards, the same cheap gray uniforms as last time, were seen leaning over my fence, stretching tape across the ground, whispering like thieves in the night. They weren't surveying. They were plotting. The second confrontation. By now I had every letter, every video, every timestamp stored on my phone. When I drove down the road later that week, I saw them again, this time outside the HOA subdivision gate. The president was there too, clipboard in hand, barking orders like a general preparing for war. I stopped my truck, stepped out, and walked straight toward her. She turned, annoyed, like I had interrupted her royal ceremony. What now? She sighed. I held up my phone. Your guards trespassed again. I have it on camera. She didn't even look at the screen. Instead, she looked at me the way a spoiled queen looks at a peasant. We are expanding HOA authority. You need to prepare to cooperate. I took a slow breath. You expand all you want, but not onto my land. Her lips tightened. Then she said something I'll never forget. Refusing the HOA is not a good decision. People who don't cooperate usually regret it. That was a threat, a direct one. I stepped closer, voice firm but controlled. This is your last warning. Your guard stepped foot on my land again. And I'm calling the sheriff. She smirked, eyes full of cold confidence. Then call him. I walked away, fists tight, pulse pounding. Her arrogance wasn't just annoying, it was dangerous. The HOA wasn't listening. They were escalating. And in the pit of my stomach, I knew what was coming next. A showdown. Something told me the next visit wouldn't be letters. Or slow SUV drives. Or fence line measuring. It would be them. On my land. Again. But worse. And I was right. Because the night before they returned, everything changed. The night before everything went down, something felt wrong. The kind of wrong that sits in the air, heavy and electric, like the silence before lightning hits. It was past 11 p.m. I was sitting in my living room, half watching TV, half thinking about the mess the HOA had been creating. The wind outside shook the old pine trees, and the sky carried a low rumble of a storm rolling over the valley. That's when my driveway alarm dinged. A soft, short chime, but one that hits your chest when you hear it at night. I walked to the window and peered through the blinds. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the shadows moving under the half-moon. Then I saw it. A pair of headlights. Slow. Deliberate. Moving down my road, stopping right outside my gate. My stomach tightened. The vehicle stayed there for a full 10 seconds. Not moving. Not honking. Not turning around. Just watching. Then it reversed, slowly, and rolled away. I stepped outside with a flashlight, the cold air hitting my face like a warning. I walked up to the gate, scanned the ground, and saw fresh tire marks. That wasn't a random visitor. That was a test. A quiet attempt. Checking my gate. Seeing if I was awake. Seeing how fast I'd respond. I took a breath and walked back inside. The preparation. That was the moment I realized. This HOA wasn't going to stop. They wanted control, and they were willing to cross any line to get it. So I prepared. I grabbed my keys, went to the gun safe, and pulled out my old shotgun. Some people keep guns for show. Mine's been in the family for decades. I wiped it down, loaded it, and set it near the front door, not out of fear, but out of readiness. Then I took out my phone and called the sheriff's office. Not 911, the direct line. Evening, this is Deputy Harris, the voice answered. I explained the situation. The trespassing. The letters. The threats. The nighttime SUV at my gate. He didn't sound surprised. Yeah, we've gotten complaints about that HOA before, he said. I'll put a note in the system. If anything happens, call us right away. That gave me some relief. Documentation. Next, I laid out everything on my kitchen table. Printed property lines. Video timestamps. Photos. Letters. The trail cam footage of the guards leaning over my fence. If they wanted a fight, I was going to fight them with the law first, and with steel only if I had no choice. Then I turned on every motion sensor and camera on the property. Lights clicked on across the yard. Floodlights lit up the driveway. The whole place looked like a secure compound instead of a quiet rural home. But I slept only 2 hours that night. Restless, listening, waiting. Because deep down, I knew the truth. When bullies get desperate, they don't back off. They push harder. And the next morning, just as the sun rose over the valley, I saw dust on the road. They were coming back. Not to talk. Not to inspect. But to confront. And this time, they were bringing backup. The sun was barely up when I heard it. The low rumble of an engine rolling across the ridge road. Not fast. Not casual. A slow, confident crawl. Like someone arriving with purpose. I stepped onto my porch, still wearing my black baseball cap from the night before. The air was cold, my breath visible. And then I saw it emerge from the dust. The gray HOA SUV. This time, it wasn't cruising by. It turned directly into the gravel strip right beside my property. My heart dropped, then hardened. The SUV stopped. The engine cut off. The doors opened. First out was guard number 1, clipboard guy, same cheap gray uniform, same I own this place attitude. Then guard number 2, taller, heavier, holding a radio like he expected a war. Then she appeared. The HOA president. The 45-year-old white woman with the stiff posture, tight ponytail, and permanent expression that said, "I get what I want." She stepped out slowly, arms crossed, sunglasses on even though the sun was barely awake. Behind her, the guards lined up like loyal soldiers. The sight alone raised my blood pressure. I took a deep breath, walked back inside, and grabbed my shotgun. No drama. No aim. Just holding it, barrel down, finger nowhere near the trigger, safe but visible. When I stepped back outside, the HOA president finally smiled. Not a friendly smile. A challenge. The confrontation begins. They walked right up to my fence. Didn't knock. Didn't call out. Didn't ask permission. Guard number 1 stepped past the fence line. Onto my land. I raised my voice instantly. "Stop right there." He froze, but only for a moment. The HOA president kept walking forward, heels crunching on my gravel like she owned it. "Good morning," she said calmly. "We're here for the property compliance inspection you've been avoiding." I tightened my grip on the shotgun, still pointed down, still safe. "There is no inspection," I said. "You are trespassing." Again. She took off her sunglasses and stared at me with pure arrogance. "You don't decide that," she said. "The HOA does." Guard number 2 stepped up beside her. "We have orders," he said. "We're inspecting the perimeter." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because anger sometimes turns into a laugh when your patience runs out. "You have no jurisdiction here," I said. "This land has never been part of your HOA. Check your county maps." The HOA president tilted her head slightly, like she was watching a child argue. "We're expanding the boundary," she said slowly. "And your property falls within the projected zone. That means we need access." I stepped closer, voice steady, eyes locked on hers. "You're not getting access. Not today. Not ever." She smirked. "Or what?" For a moment, the air went silent, dead still. Then I answered. "Or you'll find out why people don't cross this fence." The last step. Maybe it was ego. Maybe it was stupidity. But guard number 1 decided to take one more step onto my land. That was it. I cocked the shotgun. CHCHK. The sound echoed across the yard like thunder. He froze mid-step. The HOA president's smug smile finally cracked. I didn't raise the gun. I didn't threaten anyone. I just said the words that had been building for weeks. "This is your final warning. Leave my property. Right now." For a moment, no one moved. Then she whispered to the guards, voice shaky but angry. "Keep going." They hesitated. Looked at each other. Looked at the shotgun. Looked at me. And in that hesitation, justice arrived. Because at that exact moment, I heard another vehicle approaching. This one louder, faster, purposeful. A sheriff's cruiser. And they had no idea what was coming next. The sheriff's cruiser came into view like a storm rolling over the ridge, fast, loud, and direct. Gravel shot out from under its tires as it pulled up behind the HOA SUV. Lights flashing. Engine humming with authority. The HOA president's confidence evaporated the second she heard that siren chirp. The cruiser door swung open and out stepped Deputy Harris, a man who had been working the county long enough to spot trouble from a mile away. He placed his hand on his belt, eyes scanning the scene, me with a shotgun held safely at my side, 2 guards frozen mid-trespass, and the HOA president standing like a queen caught stealing. "Morning," he said, voice calm but sharp. "I got a report last night about suspicious vehicles near this property. Looks like I arrived just in time." The HOA president rushed toward him like a kid tattling in school. "Officer! Arrest him! He's threatening my staff with a weapon." Deputy Harris didn't even blink. He looked at me, then at the guards, then at the fence line. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "why are your people standing inside his property boundary?" She hesitated, just for a second, enough to expose the lie. We're conducting an HOA inspection." "He's refusing to comply." Harris raised an eyebrow. "This land ain't in your HOA." "It will be," she snapped. "We're expanding our oversight." He took off his sunglasses and looked her dead in the eye. "Not how the law works, ma'am." He stepped past her and walked toward the guards. "You too. Step back behind the fence. Now." They obeyed instantly, finally showing the kind of respect they should have shown from the start. Then he turned to me. "You good here?" I nodded. "Yes, sir. I warned them multiple times. They crossed anyway." "I can see that." He walked back to the HOA president. "Ma'am, your guards have committed criminal trespass. And your presence here, after being warned previously, could qualify as harassment." Her face went pale. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "You don't understand how HOA governance works." Harris actually laughed. A short, sharp laugh, the kind that said he'd dealt with too many people like her. "I understand it perfectly. And I also understand private property law." He pulled out a small laminated county map from his pocket. "This here," he pointed, "clearly shows his land is outside your jurisdiction. Not 1 inch of this property belongs to your HOA." She crossed her arms tightly. "This isn't over." He leaned closer. "Oh, I think it is. The law speaks. Deputy Harris asked me to recount everything. Every letter. Every trespass. Every threat. I showed him the trail cam footage, the documents, the timestamps. With each piece of evidence, the HOA president's confidence cracked further. Finally, Harris sighed. "All right. Guards, you're being detained for trespassing. President, you'll need to come down to the station for questioning." The HOA president exploded. "You can't do this. My board will hear about this. I'll have your badge." Harris didn't even flinch. "You're welcome to file a complaint. But right now, you're interfering with a police investigation." The guards were handcuffed, not aggressively, but firmly, and led toward the sheriff's cruiser. The HOA president stood frozen, lips trembling between rage and humiliation. The final words. Before she was escorted away, she turned to me with pure fury. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I stepped closer, calm as stone. "No," I said. "I regret letting it go this far before standing my ground." Deputy Harris nodded. "That shotgun never pointed at anyone," he said loudly, making sure it went on record. He was within his rights. "You all ignored every warning." The HOA president had no words left. For the first time since this all started. She looked small. Then Harris shut the cruiser door, leaving her inside with her own arrogance. And as they drove away, the valley finally felt quiet again. But the story wasn't over yet. What happened afterward would change the HOA forever. The sheriff's cruiser rolled down the road, dust kicking up behind it, taking the HOA president and her guards toward the county station. For the first time in weeks, my land felt still. No engines creeping by. No gray uniforms sneaking around. No entitled footsteps crossing my boundary. Just quiet. But the aftermath. That came fast. Later that afternoon, Deputy Harris called me. His tone was calmer than before, almost satisfied. "Well," he said, "that HOA president isn't doing herself any favors." "What happened?" "She tried claiming your whole property was part of the HOA's new expansion. Problem is, I could hear him flipping papers. The expansion request hadn't even been filed with the county." I smiled. "So she lied?" "Oh yeah," he said. "And it gets better. When I asked for written proof of jurisdiction, she showed a map one of her guards printed from the internet. Wrong boundaries. Wrong county stamp. No legal standing." I laughed, really laughed for the first time in days. "And the guards?" "Both admitted she ordered them to enter your land." He paused. Off the record, they were scared of losing their jobs if they refused. I nodded slowly. Figures. The next week, the county launched a full review of the HOA, not just the president, but the entire board. Turns out, complaints had been piling up. Threats of fines without proof. Trespassing into multiple yards. Fake inspection notices. HOA money being used for personal perks. My incident? It was the tipping point. When the county saw the footage of the guards stepping over my fence, and the president ordering them forward even with a sheriff present, that sealed her fate. She was hit with criminal trespass, harassment, abuse of authority, filing false jurisdictional claims. The guards got a warning and mandatory training. The county believed they were just following orders. But the president? She was removed from her position permanently. 2 weeks later, the HOA called an emergency meeting. Dozens of residents showed up, angry, tired, ready for answers. I wasn't part of their community, but Deputy Harris asked me to attend as a witness. When I walked into that room, people turned and stared, not with hostility, but with gratitude. One man shook my hand. She threatened to fine me for leaving my trash can out for 12 minutes. Another resident whispered. She told us she was working with the county. She lied. When the board announced her removal and charges, the entire room erupted, relief, applause, anger, everything at once. The HOA president herself wasn't there. She'd been banned from attending. For the first time, the community actually felt like they were being heard. The board elected a new HOA president, a calm, older gentleman who spoke with humility instead of arrogance. He approached me after the meeting. "Sir," he said, "on behalf of the community, thank you. If you hadn't stood your ground, we wouldn't have discovered any of this." I nodded. "I didn't do it for the HOA," I said. "I did it because no one has the right to take someone's land." He smiled. "And because you did, a lot of people here finally got their peace back." The next morning, I walked my property line again, the same walk I'd done 1,000 times. The wind was calm. The sky was pink from sunrise. Birds perched on the fence posts like nothing had ever happened. And for the first time in a long time, I felt that old peaceful silence return. No HOA SUVs. No trespassers. No threats. Just me, my land, and the legacy my family built. The final lesson. People think owning land is simple. But land is more than dirt and trees. It's history. It's identity. It's responsibility. And when someone tries to take it, you don't bow. You don't let fear win. You stand. Sometimes with paperwork. Sometimes with law enforcement. And sometimes, when pushed too far, you stand with a shotgun in your hands and a line they won't cross again. Justice wasn't just served that day. It was earned.